I felt Nwokobia. I was born in Minneapolis, and from the time when I was really young, my family knew other multiracial families, and I had other mixed-race friends. Then when I was around 8, my family moved to a town just outside of Nashville. I remember one day I was going to the video store with my mom, and when we went up to the counter to check out, the woman working there turned to my mother and asked her, "Where's her mom?" My mom replied saying that she is my mother, and the woman asked again, "No, her real mom." My mother said that she was my real mom. The woman looked really confused, but dropped the subject. At the time, I found it quite annoying, but now it's a reaction I've learned to get used to.
I'm Max Collyard. I've always looked pretty tan, maybe vaguely ethnic, but I've never really experienced racism explicitly until one week when my dad took us all down to Texas with my brothers. And somehow, when we met up with his friends at the bar, the topic got to daughters because my sister wasn't with us at the time. And this woman told a story about her daughter calling her and asking her if she could date a black man. And her reaction was absolutely not, because there's nothing wrong with them. It's just if one of them starts dating my daughter, then they'll all think it's okay. It was the first time I had heard the N-word used in a hateful tone. Because of how she saw me and how she saw others, she thought this was an appropriate anecdote. My ethnic ambiguity allowed me to escape racism, yet I had to stand by and watch it happen.
My name's Elena Miller. When people look at me, they see a short Latina. When people look at me, they assume me to be like other Latinos they have met, unless they ask. I've surprised so many people by telling them that while I am not yet fluent in Spanish, I am still learning. I have attended private school my entire life, and I am studying here at college to be pre-med, majoring in biology, and with a concentration in neuroscience. When I'm with my Latino friends, I have a hard time relating to them because they do not all share the same dream of making higher education their top priority. I'm a part of two worlds because while I've been raised in an upper middle white class household, I'm still proudly appearing Latina.
I'm Alvarez. When I moved in elementary school, I went from a somewhat diverse neighborhood to a predominantly white one. And I didn't really think it would be a big deal until people started labeling my family as weird for the way my parents were running my life at the time. And so at that point I realized that being Cuban isn't really okay if you want to fit in with all your white classmates. So then I started to get embarrassed when my parents would speak to me in Spanish in front of other people, and I tried my best to get my family and myself to conform to the way everybody else around me was living their lives. And then when I took a Spanish class in middle school, I couldn't really hide it anymore. And so people actually responded a lot more positively than I was expecting. So then I tried to go back to the way that I was when I was a little kid. And then in high school, there were a lot more inner city Latino kids at my school. The problem was that since I'd been trying to fit in with white kids for so long, Latino kids didn't really want a whole lot to do with me, because even though I only look a little Hispanic, I definitely act really white.
I'm Zachary Hylton. Throughout my entire life, I've struggled to be black. I remember I used to go behind my mom's back and wear the clothes she didn't like and listen to the music she told me not to listen to. Still, most of the kids at school were white, and they seemed to like me a lot better than the kids in my neighborhood. Eventually, I made friends with the kids down the block, but when they tried to introduce me to their friends, they all said I talked white. We used to say a song when we went our separate ways. Now, I wear a fitted sometimes when I go out and listen to all the classics, like the OJs, Nas, John Coltrane. Now the kids down the block, they listen to like Wiz and Waka and Gucci, and they wear skinny jeans. And now I talk Chinese and French just because I think it's cool. And all the kids down the block, they think that's cute. That's real cool too. You know, I'm black, but it doesn't seem to mean the same thing that it used to. My grandma sure seems to know what it is. We say peace when we hang up the phone. Maybe it's about the struggle. Nah, seems like everybody else is struggling too.
Living in a racial America definitely isn't easy, and multiracial Americans have their own story to tell. In 1998, the federal government finally decided to consider having a multiracial option on the 2000 census. This could be groundbreaking, literally changing the racial makeup of America. And for multiracial Americans, it would affirm an idea that had been fought over throughout the decade, that multiracial Americans have their own identity.
It wasn't the first time an idea like this had been raised.
Instead, it was an end to a century's worth of consideration.
As multiracial Americans struggled to decide and affirm who they were.
Yet they weren't alone.
In 1994, scholar, psychologist, and innovator Maria Root wrote a multiracial Bill of Rights.
It affirmed a list of 12 rights exclusive to Americans of mixed race ancestry.
12 rights denied throughout history and still denied today.
I have the right.
Not to justify my existence in this world.
Not to keep the races separate within me.
Not to justify my ethnic legitimacy.
Not to be responsible for people's discomfort with my ethnic ambiguity.
I have the right.
To identify myself differently than how strangers,
Parents,
Brothers and sisters.
Identify me.
I have the right.
To create a vocabulary about being multiracial or multi-ethnic.
To change my identity over my lifetime more than once.
To have loyalties and identification with more than one group of people.
I have the right.
to freely choose who I befriend and love.
Affirming these rights definitely isn't simple.
It is about affirming the rights and identity of a people who are neither black
Nor white.
But instead,
Somewhere in between.
And you can say it started in New Orleans.
I have the right to justify my existence in this world.
The post-Civil War period was a rare point in American history, where there existed a class of mixed-race individuals, black and white, who held a prominence second only to that of the white elite. This colored class of people were light in skin tone, wealthy, educated, and took part in the high-class living of the bourgeoisie. They weren't afraid to take pride in their biracial status. Instead, let everyone know they were not black, not white, but somewhere in between. This class existed all around the nation, but found a haven, most noticeably in New Orleans. Here existed a class of colored people who identified themselves as Creole.
Author John William DeForest's Thoughts on New Orleans Culture, 1867. There is a geographical fable of civilized white Negroes in the center of Africa. This fable is realized in the Crescent City and in some of the richest planting districts of Louisiana, where you will find a race of colored people who are not black people at all, having only the merest fraction of Negro blood in their veins, and who are respectable in character, numbers of them wealthy, and some of them accomplished. These Creoles, as they call themselves, have been free for generations, and until Anglo-Saxon law invaded Louisiana, enjoyed the same rights as other citizens. They are good Catholics. They marry and are given in marriage. Their sons are educated in Paris on a perfect level with young Frenchmen. Their daughters receive the strict surveillance which is allotted to girls in most southern cities. In the street, many of them are scarcely distinguishable from the unmixed descendants of the old French planters. But there's a social line of demarcation about them. Like the sanitary cordon about an infected street, the Anglo-Saxon race, the proudest race of modern times, does not marry nor consort with them, nor does the pure French Creole.
Voices of the 90s, Sandra Shoop. One time I got the flour out, and when my dad came home, I had myself covered in flour from head to toe.
What are you doing?
I'm going to be one color,
Why are you going to be white?
because we don't have any black powder. He looked at me and just sort of shook his head. Dad, what am I? And he told me.
You are a beautiful little girl.
No, Dad, that doesn't work. What am I really?
Well, what do you want to hear? What do you want to be?
I don't know what I want to be. I just don't understand why I have to be anything at all. I don't understand what's going on. Finally, he told me.
Well, you're black, and you've got really nice hair. Does that sound good?
Well, I guess so.
Okay. That one will work for a couple of years. Go with it.
I have the right to create a vocabulary to communicate about being multiracial or multi-ethnic.
Prior to 1900, there were several names used to legally classify multiracial people. Most of these names were based on blood quantum, describing the amount of African blood an individual had. At this time, at least 5 names could be used to legally classify people of white and black mixed ancestry alone. Of course, the list of names used colloquially stretches far further than that.
Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to another week's installment of America's favorite show.
Name that Negro!
That's right, folks. The game show all about naming some of America's most challenging racial class, the mixed Negro. There'll be no passing for white in this case. It's time to put people
In their place!
That's right. All contestants, let's have a look at mystery number 1. His grandfather came straight from Africa, but his family's been going white ever since. What's that make him?
Oh, he's an octoroon.
Octoroon, or 1/8 black, is incorrect. Learn to do your math, Angela.
quadroon.
Correct! 1,000 points to Ben. Round 2. Mom's white, dad's black. What's that make her?
She's a mutt.
Ooh, cheap shot, Crystal. You know every single mystery we have here is a mixed breed. Too general. No points for you.
Is the answer high yellow?
Ooh, not quite light enough to be high yellow. You gotta know your colors here, Angela.
Mulatto.
Correct! Another 1,000 to Ben. The Spanish term. Based off the Spanish term for mule. So, now, next is our daily eyeball challenge. You'll get no description on this one.
African.
Pinto.
Zombo.
Colored.
Swirly.
Oh! An Oreo!
Angela gets it! Black on the outside, but a little white in the middle. 5,000 points! I'm sorry. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Join us next time on
Name That Negro!
I have the right to identify myself differently than how strangers expect me to identify.
Shortly after 1900, something called the one-drop rule arose around the nation. This rule simply stated that 1 drop of black blood makes a person 100% Negro, regardless of any mixed-race ancestry. This was used in legal documents, census counting, and of course the courtroom. Once it was decided that a suspect looked like a Negro, it became a simple fact to say that they must have 1 drop of black blood, and therefore not entitled to any of the rights of the white population. This included the right to marry a white spouse. Thus began the era of miscegenation, or racial mixing law.
Wilson v. State, Alabama Court of Appeals, 1924. A seemingly mixed-race woman is accused of having Negro blood, and therefore acting against Alabama state law through her marriage of a white man.
The defense argues that it is necessary and incumbent upon the state to fully trace the antecedents of a defendant in order to establish the race of an accused.
The winning argument at the court went as follows.
The court argues that a rule of that kind, where the inquiry is material, might, and no doubt would, often defeat the ends of justice because of the impossibility clearly apparent in making such a proof. We think that, if for no other reason, the rule born of necessity should and does permit a witness, if he knows such to be the fact, to testify that a person is a Negro or is a white person, or that he is a man or that she is a woman, for courts are not supposed to be ignorant of what everyone else is presumed to know, and in this jurisdiction, certainly every person possessed of every degree of intelligence knows a Negro.
Voices of the 90s.
Robert Allen.
Jimmy Pierre.
Hannah Carvalho.
Deborah Gregory.
Joseph Marble.
I've been out with every type of man. I've been out with Asians, Indians, from India. But I seem to prefer black men. That's what really feels comfortable.
The last couple people I've dated have all been white. My friends and family throw it in my face all the time. Let's just say that if I brought home someone black, they'd be thrilled.
But I never met any black men. I'm always alone, and I'm a beautiful woman, if I must say so myself, since no one else is. I really think that if I would open myself to white guys, I'd have a boyfriend. It's not that I don't want to do that, it's that I can't do it yet.
Oh, what's my dating history? White, 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 black. Of course, I was like 10 years old. White.
I'm not at that place yet, so I can't force myself. I would like to evolve to, and hopefully I will. But I see a black guy go by, and it's like I have whiplash. My head moves so fast.
Oh, white, Filipino, white, 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 white,
I was
white.
hanging out with some of my old high school friends, and the topic of relationships came up. One of the guys turned to me and asked, "Are you still dating that black guy?" I looked at him and said, "Do you mean Nathaniel?" "Yeah." Then they all started teasing me, saying that I caught the jungle fever and turned into a night rider. I never thought it was that big of a deal that I was dating a biracial man. Apparently I was wrong.
For some reason, I've never been attracted to going out with or dating anybody white. But I dated women that were very light and women that were very dark. It just so happened that the woman I ended up marrying was biracial. Her father was white. And in some ways, I felt like we had a connection there because of some work from our own experiences. I'm not married now, it just didn't work out. But she was very light. And in some ways, I felt like we had a bond there because just like me, she would experience, well, you're very light, you have nice hair. People would even look at both of us and say, you probably think you're better than or this kind of thing. And it's not to say that I wouldn't marry anybody white, it's just the chances are probably slim to none.